Have you ever just sat quietly in a room, completely surrounded by people you love, and suddenly realized that you are just entirely exhausted? And I don't mean physically, I mean deeply emotionally drained. You're the helper, the caretaker, the one literally everyone relies on. But somewhere along the line, in your totally noble quest to save everyone else, you might have stepped right into a psychological labyrinth. In this explainer, we aren't looking at some physical trap. We're looking at a deeply personal, often completely hidden phenomenon. We're going to see how the purest intentions to help others can slowly, silently, turn into an invisible trap.
Listen to this visceral confession from someone describing their daily reality. They said, "I just existed, silently watching, and I could feel myself grow smaller each time." Wow. This perfectly captures the haunting nature of what we're actually talking about today. You aren't losing your identity in some sudden, catastrophic explosion. No, it's way worse. You're losing it by fading away, inch by inch, all while you are busy managing someone else's life.
It's the dark irony of the selfless caretaker, isn't it? You anticipate their needs before they even open their mouths to speak. You fix, you nurture, you fuss over others. Your life's motto is essentially, your problem is my problem. But the result? You are just completely, utterly exhausted. We call it caretaking, or love, or even righteous indignation. But let's be real. In reality, you are pouring from a cup that has literally been empty for years.
So what is actually happening here? Well, Melody Beattie, who's a real pioneer in this field, offers this incredibly stark definition. She says codependency is an obsession with controlling another person's behavior while letting their behavior control you. And what makes this so insidious is that, you guys, it isn't just clinical jargon. It's a reactionary process. It's this silent psychological trap where your own emotional survival becomes utterly dependent on managing someone else's dysfunction.
Which brings us to a frankly terrifying paradox. We feel safest when giving, yet we sit around wondering why we are so incredibly empty inside. Think about it. As a caretaker, you derive your self-worth, your very sense of existing, from being needed. Maybe you don't really feel lovable, right? So you settle for being needed. But caring has completely morphed into this toxic cycle of self-martyrdom. You've become so totally absorbed in other people's problems that you don't even have the time, or honestly the capacity, to identify your own.
So how does this trap actually physically manifest in your daily life? Well, it starts quietly. You start caring for others at the literal expense of your own needs. You smile and say yes when every single fiber of your being is desperately screaming no. You try to fix feelings that simply aren't yours to fix. And you do things for perfectly capable adults that they absolutely should be doing for themselves. Look, this isn't love. This is a slow, painful erosion of your own boundaries, leading straight to an inescapable cycle of emotional exhaustion.
To really understand how this trap closes around us, we have to look at the psychological mechanics here. It's called the Karpman drama triangle, and it's fascinating. Step 1. You act as the rescuer. You take total responsibility for another adult and jump in to save the day. Then, step 2, you become the persecutor. Because you completely overextended yourself, this creeping anger and bitter resentment sets in. You actually get mad at them for relying on you. And finally, step 3, you drop straight to the bottom of the triangle as the victim. You feel utterly used, helpless, and totally unappreciated. The ultimate tragedy here is that in trying to be a superhero, you literally trap yourself in a cycle of suffering.
But what happens when the savior inevitably becomes the victim? Really, think about that for a second. The person who sacrificed absolutely everything to hold the whole world together is now drowning in resentment, feeling completely abandoned by the very people they tried to save. It leaves us with this lingering, painful question. Why do we do this to ourselves? Where does this desperate need to be the caretaker actually come from? To find that answer, we actually have to shift our focus backward in time. We need to explore the origin, the exact place where this profound feeling of hollowness begins. Because let's be honest, the caretaker doesn't just wake up one random Tuesday deciding to forfeit their entire identity. No, it is a deeply learned survival mechanism.
And that crucial starting point is often found in what psychologists call the nothing family. Now, there's no obvious trauma here, no loud, horrific abuse that you can easily point a finger at. Instead, it's just a quiet room. Emotions were completely ignored or simply not recognized. Big feelings, they were punished, diminished, or even made fun of. Children in these environments learn to function perfectly on the outside, getting good grades, keeping the peace, but inside, they are completely hollow.
They grow into adults who are completely unable to identify their own needs, simply because they were taught early on that their needs didn't matter.
And this leaves you with a truly haunting consequence. You grow up feeling entirely alone in a room full of people. It's almost like there's this thick wall of glass separating you from everyone else. You watch group conversations, desperately trying to find a place to insert yourself, but you just never find it. That childhood wound is invisible, but it dictates absolutely everything. Because you feel empty, you seek out broken people to fix, kind of hoping that their gratitude will somehow eventually fill your own void.
And so this incredibly tragic reality takes shape. In trying to save them, we completely lose ourselves. By attaching your entire existence to managing someone else's dysfunction, you just abandon your own identity. You literally stop feeling your own positive emotions, and you're left with nothing but rage, bitterness, and despair. You are slowly shrinking away just so that someone else can take up all the space in the room.
But here is where our story pivots. I want you to listen to this incredible realization from the sources. I am so much more than codependent, and it isn't fair to me to define myself by the worst aspects of my behavior. Yes, true recovery begins right here. It means acknowledging these deeply ingrained destructive habits without letting the label become your entire identity. You are not fundamentally broken. Actually, scratch that. It's more like you just learned a way with surviving that simply no longer serves you. This brings us to the awakening. Listen closely. Detachment is not cruelty. It is the ultimate act of self-love. Detaching doesn't mean you stop caring or that you just abandon the people you love. No way. It means you take your emotional, mental, and physical hands out of other people's lives and you put them back in your own pockets. You let other people be responsible for their own consequences. And for the first time, you finally take responsibility for yourself. When you make that shift, I'm telling you, everything changes. You move from an addictive relationship right into a truly loving one. Think about it. An addictive dynamic is a closed system. It's this total, suffocating involvement where you neglect your old friends and depend entirely on that other person's approval for your own identity. But a truly loving relationship, that is an open system. You have separate interests. You maintain other meaningful relationships. You are completely secure in your own worth, regardless of what the other person happens to be doing. This profound shift is so beautifully captured in the legacy of Melody Beattie's groundbreaking work. By actually naming this invisible trap, she provided a map right out of the psychological labyrinth for literally millions of people. It's a powerful reminder that it is entirely possible to break these chains. You can actually unlearn the self-martyrdom. You can find yourself again. Which brings us to a really profound state of being known as undependence. Undependence is just beautifully balanced. It's acknowledging our perfectly natural human needs for love and connection without becoming harmfully dependent on others for our actual survival. It means you can experience deep, meaningful love without forfeiting your soul in the process. You finally recognize that the magic isn't just in other people, it's right there inside you too.
As we wrap up this explainer, there is really only one question left. And it's a question that might just change the entire trajectory of your life if you let it echo in the quiet of your mind for a bit. Are you ready to stop rescuing them and finally rescue yourself?